The massive circular chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as Councillor Vexalia of the Thraxi Collective pointed one trembling appendage toward Earth's empty seat. The ornate chair, crafted from rare lunar marble and inlaid with blue-green stones that mimicked the ancient human homeworld's appearance from space, had remained unoccupied for 5 centuries. Today, it seemed to absorb the light around it like a hungry shadow. Another outpost has gone dark. The third this cycle, Vexalia announced, her voice sacs pulsing with stress pigments. The holographic display above the central dais showed the Proxima research station's last transmission, a chaotic blur of technicians frantically working before all signals ceased. High Counselor Gen 2's crystalline form caught the chamber's light as he leaned forward. For a being comprised of living silicon, displaying emotion was difficult, but the rapid oscillations in his facets betrayed deep concern. This pattern matches the previous failures at Ta Ceti and the Barnard Star Relay, stated Science Minister Oropak, his avian features precisely groomed as always, betraying nothing of his species' legendary anxiety. In each case, systems began experiencing quantum fluctuations before complete technological collapse. Ambassador Drull of the Aquatic Mercent Collective bubbled thoughtfully in her water suspension pod. And each affected system lies along a direct path between the quarantine zone and the galactic core. The quarantine zone. No one needed elaboration. For 5 centuries, the interdiction field around Sol system had stood as both barrier and memorial to humanity's unexplained disappearance. Shortly after achieving faster-than-light capability, all human communications had simply stopped. The exploratory fleet that investigated found only automated defense systems preventing approach. Humanity, it seemed, had either destroyed itself or abandoned their cradle of civilization for reasons unknown. "I move that we acknowledge the possibility of human involvement," said Councillor Xanthar of the Valaxian Empire, his normally melodious voice hardened with conviction. These technological failures bear similarity to theoretical weapons systems humans were developing before their disappearance. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices, sense signals, color flashes, and electromagnetic pulses as hundreds of species communicated their alarm or disagreement through their native methods. Across the chamber, the enigmatic Ambassador Clith, last survivor of a species that had once warred with humans, remained motionless. His chitinous exoskeleton reflected nothing, seeming to draw darkness around him like a cloak. Only his aide noticed how his primary sensing organ had dilated to its fullest extent, focused intently on Earth's empty seat. "They have no idea what they're about to unleash," Clith whispered, a sound like ancient paper tearing. High Counselor Gen 2 slammed his crystalline gavel, sending harmonics that resonated with every species' auditory organs, instantly restoring order. "The Council has maintained the quarantine for 5 centuries out of respect and caution." Gen 2's voice resonated. "But these escalating incidents demand investigation. If something remains of Earth, or if something has replaced humanity's presence, we must know." Ambassador Tyle Orak of the Prophecy Keepers rose, her 9 eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of extreme distress among her kind. "The patterns we have preserved from 17 extinct civilizations warn against this course. The mathematical probabilities suggest." "We are not guided by superstition," interrupted War Minister Grawl, his massive reptilian form rising to tower over the smaller ambassador. "If humans have returned, or if some new entity occupies their territory, the combined fleet stands ready to neutralize any threat." Gen 2's decision crystallized, quite literally, as new facets formed across his surface, the physical manifestation of a formal council resolution taking shape. "The Council hereby authorizes an expedition to the edge of the human quarantine zone. The science vessel Astral Seeker will approach under diplomatic protocols. Ambassador Clith, given your species' historical knowledge of humans, you will provide advisory support." Clith inclined his head slightly, revealing nothing of his thoughts. As the session adjourned, no one noticed how the empty Earth seat seemed to pulse once, a vibration so subtle that even the chamber's sophisticated monitoring systems failed to register it. Something was awakening, something that had never truly been gone. Admiral Krillna's tentacles rippled with stress patterns as she surveyed the bridge of the Astral Seeker. The science vessel, while equipped with the finest sensors and research equipment the Council could provide, carried only minimal defensive capabilities. Not that weapons would matter much if the rumors about human technology were true. "Status report," she ordered, her voice calm despite the anxiety patterns visible across her azure skin. Science Officer Taylin looked up from her console, the Illyrian's empathic receptors glowing faintly along her temples. "We are approaching the outer boundary of Sol's heliopause. Admiral, all systems nominal. No sign of the defensive measures mentioned in historical records." Vox 427, the artificial intelligence specialist, interfaced directly with the ship's systems through the neural ports along his synthetic spine. "I am detecting unusual quantum fluctuations, similar to those reported before the outpost failures. Recommend reducing speed to allow for continued analysis." Krillna gestured agreement, her command tentacles forming the pattern for caution. "Reduce to 1/4 standard. Deploy long-range sensors. Cliff, does any of this match your species' historical encounters with humans?" The chitinous ambassador stood motionless by the observation port, his exoskeleton reflecting the starlight in unsettling patterns. Humans were always unpredictable. They developed technologies in random directions, without the logical progression most species follow. It made them dangerous. And yet your people went to war with them. Taylin noted, her empathic receptors detecting the complex emotional patterns emanating from Cliff, something resembling both dread and anticipation. "A mistake," Cliff replied simply, "one that cost us our homeworld." The bridge fell silent at this rare acknowledgement. Few knew the details of the human-Xoralcan conflict, only that it had ended with the near extinction of Cliff's species. "Boundary crossing in 3, 2, 1, announced Navigation Officer Pell, her feathered crest rising with tension. The moment the Astral Seeker crossed the heliopause, reality itself seemed to flicker. The view screens distorted, displaying impossible readings as the ship's quantum computers struggled to process contradictory data. "Impossible," whispered Taylin, her empathic receptors overloading with information her mind couldn't interpret. "The star charts are wrong. The planets are wrong. This entire system has been reconfigured. Where scanners should have shown a devastated Earth, or at least the abandoned planet most expected, they instead detected a thriving world surrounded by massive orbital structures, unlike any known technology. The star itself appeared to pulse with engineered patterns, its solar flares forming geometric shapes that defied natural physics. Those structures," Vox 427 said, his synthetic voice tinged with something approaching awe. "I'm detecting a computational density that exceeds the combined processing power of the entire Galactic Council. Whatever built those has been calculating something for centuries." "Not structures," Cliff corrected quietly. "Extensions. The humans have extended themselves beyond biological constraints." Krillna's command tentacles formed the pattern for immediate retreat, but before she could vocalize the order, every communication system on the bridge activated simultaneously. Screens that should have shown star charts displayed a human face, female by their biological standards, with dark skin and eyes that seemed to contain flowing data patterns beneath their surface. "Unauthorized breach detected," the human voice stated, calm and precise. "You have entered protected space." The bridge crew froze as the ship's engines shut down without any command input. Even the emergency systems failed to respond. "We've been expecting you for some time, Admiral," the human continued, her expression shifting to something that might have been amusement. "Perhaps too long." Krillna fought to maintain her composure as the implications became clear. The humans had not only survived whatever had caused their isolation, they had thrived, evolved, and been watching the Council all along. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I request communication with Earth's governing authority," Krelma stated formally, following first contact protocols that felt absurdly inadequate under the circumstances. The human's expression changed again, data patterns flowing more rapidly beneath her skin. Earth has no government as you would understand it. But the stewardship will receive your delegation. Prepare for transit. Before anyone could respond, a sphere of distorted space enveloped the bridge. The last thing Krelma saw before her consciousness shifted was Clith's posture, not of surprise or fear, but of grim confirmation, as though everything was proceeding exactly as he had expected. The transit was instantaneous. One moment they stood on the bridge of the Astral Seeker, the next they materialized on a platform overlooking an Earth city unlike anything in historical records. Krelma's equilibrium tentacles quivered as she steadied herself. Around her, the delegation displayed various signs of disorientation, except for Clith, who remained unnervingly still. Teleportation across such distance should be impossible, whispered Science Officer Taylin, her empathic receptors dimmed to protect herself from the overwhelming emotional imprints saturating this place. Much of what you will see today defies your current understanding of possible, said a voice behind them. They turned to face the human who had appeared on their view screens. In person, Director Ileana Chen looked entirely human except for the silver circuitry visible beneath her skin and the unnatural stillness of her movements. Her eyes shifted occasionally, displaying streams of data flowing across her pupils. "We call ourselves the Stewardship now," she explained, gesturing toward the sprawling city below. Humanity as you knew it evolved past biological constraints centuries ago. The city before them defied conventional urban design. Buildings seemed to grow from the landscape rather than being constructed upon it. Surfaces rippled with responsive materials that adjusted to environmental conditions in real time. Humans moved throughout the space, some appearing fully biological, others displaying various degrees of technological integration. Most striking was the absence of vehicles or visible transportation networks, yet people appeared and disappeared throughout the cityscape at will. "Your historical records suggest extinction or self-destruction," Krelma said, her scientific tentacles extended in observation mode. "Yet you appear to have thrived in isolation." "Not isolation. Transformation," Director Chen corrected. When Admiral Krelna demanded to know why Earth had abandoned the galactic community, Chen's eyes shifted to display what looked like cosmic data streaming across her pupils. "We never left. We simply began operating on levels you couldn't perceive." Vox 427 synthetic systems struggled to process the technological implications. "The computational density we detected. You've transcended digital architecture entirely." "Computation implies separation between processor and information," Chen replied. "We no longer maintain such distinctions. Thought and data are unified aspects of the same fundamental process." Clith stepped forward, addressing Chen directly. "You knew my kind would warn the Council about this expedition. You wanted us to come. It wasn't a question." Chen nodded, regarding Clith with something resembling respect. "The Exoralcan always understood us better than most." "Yes, Ambassador. Recent developments have made direct communication necessary." She guided them along a pathway that assembled itself before their feet, materials flowing into solid form with each step. "The technological failures your council has been experiencing are not attacks. They're side effects of our work, unfortunate but unavoidable." Taylin gasped as they approached the edge of the city, where the urban landscape opened to reveal a massive pit descending deep into Earth's crust. Energy patterns swirled within it, occasionally stabilizing into recognizable geometries before dissolving again. The air itself seemed to bend around the edges of the pit. "This is a dimensional anchor, one of thousands we've built throughout Council space while you believed we were extinct," Chen explained. "The real question, Admiral, isn't where we've been, but what we've been fighting." Krelna felt her chromatophores pale to colorless transparency, the most extreme expression of shock her species could display. "You've been operating inside Council territory without authorization. We've been operating beyond your perception." Chen corrected gently. Necessity demanded secrecy. 5 centuries ago, we discovered something in the fabric of reality. Something ancient and hungry that your species cannot detect. We withdrew not out of fear of the Council, but to develop countermeasures without causing panic. She gestured toward the pit. This anchor stabilizes local space-time against intrusion. Without such protections, what happened to your outposts would become commonplace throughout the galaxy. We've contained the threat thus far, but recent breaches have accelerated beyond our predictive models. The time for secrecy has ended. Clith chittered softly, a sound his translator didn't convert. The Void Striders. They've returned. Chen turned to him, genuine surprise crossing her features for the first time. You know of them. My ancestors called them by a different name, Clith replied. But the description matches our oldest warnings. They consumed 3 of our colony worlds before the humans intervened. That intervention cost us dearly, Chen said quietly. But it showed us what we were truly facing, and what we would need to become to fight it. The Antarctic facility stretched for miles beneath the ice, a labyrinth of chambers illuminated by soft blue light that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Admiral Krelna and her delegation followed Director Chen through corridors where humans worked in silent communion with their technology. Many stood motionless before terminals that displayed information in formats no Council species could interpret, their eyes flashing with the same data patterns visible beneath Chen's skin. Your entire species has undergone this transformation, asked Talin, her scientific curiosity temporarily overriding her empathic caution. Not entirely, Chen replied. Some maintain primarily biological forms, particularly those who work directly with other species. Others have integrated more deeply with our technological systems. It's a spectrum of choice, not a mandate. They entered a vast circular chamber where hundreds of humans were interfaced directly with crystalline consoles. At the center stood a 3-dimensional projection of the galaxy, rotating slowly to reveal thousands of pulsing red points scattered throughout Council space. Director Chen placed her hand on a crystal console, and the ceiling transformed into an expanded galactic display. The red points intensified, some pulsating with increasing frequency. We call them Void Striders, entities that exist between dimensions and feed on conscious thought, Chen explained. Your people can't detect them, but we evolved to sense their presence after our first colony was consumed. The display zoomed to show footage of a human outpost on a barren world. Workers moved about their tasks until, without warning, they stopped. One by one, their eyes darkened, turning completely black. Their bodies remained standing for several moments before collapsing into dust that scattered in the planet's thin atmosphere. Science Officer Talin collapsed, overwhelmed by the implications for her spiritually focused species. Vox 427 caught her before she hit the floor, his synthetic face displaying genuine concern. They don't just kill, they erase, Chen continued, her voice softening. Those who die by Void Striders leave no psychic imprint, no afterlife and traditions that believe in such things. Complete oblivion. Clith stepped closer to the display, his exoskeleton reflecting the red points in disturbing patterns. In our oldest records, we called them the Unmakers. They came through tears in reality during our early space exploration. 3 colony worlds went silent before we encountered humanity. Our war with your species was a tragic misunderstanding, Chen acknowledged. We detected Void Strider activity in your territory and intervened without proper communication. You interpreted our actions as aggression, and we nearly destroyed ourselves fighting you, Clith replied. Only afterward did we realize you had saved what remained of our civilization. Krelna's command tentacles formed patterns of urgent inquiry. These entities, you're claiming they're responsible for our recent outpost failures. The technological disruptions. Yes and no, Chen said, gesturing toward the display. The technological failures you're experiencing are the side effect of our containment fields. The dimensional anchors stabilize reality, where the Void Striders attempt to break through. but they create quantum disturbances that affect your technology. She adjusted the display to show a timeline, with the red points increasing exponentially over recent years. For centuries, we maintained a balance, detecting incursions, deploying anchors, preventing breaches. But in the past decade, the attempts have increased beyond our capacity to contain them without more drastic measures. Vox 427 looked up from attending to Taylin. You had to choose between revealing yourselves or letting the rifts spread. We chose secrecy. Until now, Chen confirmed. But recent developments have forced our hand. The Void Striders have begun coordinating their breaches, something we've never observed before. They're targeting specific systems, creating patterns that suggest intelligence rather than instinctive feeding behavior. The display shifted again, showing the most recent outpost failures. The red points formed a clear geometric pattern, expanding from the edges of council space toward the core worlds. They're hunting, Clith said, his normally expressionless voice carrying unmistakable dread. Hunting consciously, methodically. Yes, Chen agreed. And the next predicted breach point is the Galactic Council homeworld itself. We've deployed additional anchors, but without the Council's cooperation and understanding, millions will die in the coming days. Krulna's skin shifted to the formal decision-making pattern of her species. We must warn the Council immediately. That's why we allowed your expedition to find us, Chen said. But I must warn you. The Council's reaction will likely not be what you hope. We've run simulations of their response over 10,000 times. In 94.3% of scenarios, they choose to attack us rather than confront the truth. The emergency council session erupted into chaos the moment Admiral Krulna's transmission concluded. Representatives from 732 species shouted, flashed, pulsed, and emitted pheromones in a cacophony of alarm and disbelief. The chamber's translation systems struggled to keep pace with the overlapping communications. Preposterous, shouted the mechanoid representative, his articulated metal form vibrating with indignation. Humans were always pathologically prone to exaggeration. These Void Striders are clearly a fabrication to justify their unauthorized activities in council space. The Urax war minister slammed his battle staff against the floor, creating a resonant boom that momentarily silenced the chamber, his reptilian features contorted with ancestral hatred. While we debate, I have dispatched our dreadnought fleet to neutralize this human deception. The Earth quarantine will be upgraded to full military containment immediately. High Counselor Gen2's crystalline form flickered with distress patterns. This action violates Council protocol. No military deployment was authorized. Emergency provisions permit immediate response to existential threats, the War Minister replied, baring serrated teeth. The human admission of deploying unauthorized technology throughout Council space constitutes such a threat. Across the chamber, Counselor Xanthar of the Valaxian Empire rose, his voice cutting through the renewed chaos. Colleagues, I urge caution. The Valaxian archives contain references to entities matching these Void Striders. Ancient warning glyphs depict beings that devour consciousness itself. His words were drowned out as species after species announced their military commitments to the Earth quarantine zone. The Thraxi committed their stealth corvettes. The Mercen pledged their gravity manipulation fleets. Even the normally pacifistic Illurians offered their empathic disruptor technology. Ambassador Clith, attending via quantum projection from the Astral Seeker *, watched the proceedings with the stillness that made his species so unsettling to others. Finally, he moved forward, the motion so unexpected that the chamber quieted. The Toralkan archives confirm humanity's claims, he stated simply. 5 centuries ago, we mistakenly went to war with humans when they entered our space to combat these entities. 3 of our colony worlds had already fallen to what we called the Unmakers. We wrongly believed humans responsible. The mechanoid representative's optical sensors narrowed. Convenient that the only supporting testimony comes from a species nearly destroyed by humans. Perhaps your programming was altered during your captivity. Flith's exoskeleton darkened, the Thorolcan equivalent of dangerous anger. The humans never held me captive. They saved the last of my kind after our misguided aggression nearly destroyed us both. I have spent 5 centuries ensuring such a mistake would not be repeated. The Council needs no history lessons from a remnant species, the Urrax War Minister growled. The combined fleet will reach Sol in 16 hours. We will determine the truth through direct action. On the Astral Seeker, now designated a trader vessel for supporting human claims, Director Chen showed Admiral Krolna the real-time tactical display of approaching Council fleets. Hundreds of warships converged on the Sol system from all directions, moving at maximum speed. We calculated a 94.3% probability of this reaction, Chen said, her expression more human in its sadness than Krelna had yet witnessed. It's why we withdrew rather than trying to convince you. The Council's fear is a predictable constant across all our simulations. She sighed, a strangely human gesture from her increasingly mechanical form. 5 centuries ago, we faced a choice: reveal the Void Strider threat and watch galactic civilization tear itself apart in panic, or withdraw to fight alone while developing the necessary countermeasures. Krolna's skin rippled with distress patterns. And now we must reveal capabilities we hope to keep hidden until the final confrontation with the Void, Chen replied. The Council has forced our hand, Admiral. What happens next will rewrite galactic history. She turned to Kaklith, who had just returned from the failed Council session. Your warning was delivered exactly as we predicted, Ambassador. Your debt to humanity is paid in full. Klith's posture shifted subtly. My species does not consider our debt paid while the Unmakers still exist. I will remain with your stewardship until the end. Chen nodded in acknowledgement before addressing the entire delegation. You should prepare yourselves. When the Council fleet arrives, they will witness what humanity has become. It will not be gentle, and it will not be what any of you expect. The first Council dreadnoughts that entered the Sol system were met not with weapons but with silence. Their sensors detected the human orbital structures powering down, energy signatures dimming as if surrendering. The massive Urrax flagship Sovereign Claw led the vanguard, its scaled commander hissing in satisfaction at what appeared to be human capitulation. All vessels hold position, ordered War Minister Grawl from the Council Command Center. The Sovereign Claw will approach Earth directly to establish dominance. Prepare boarding parties to secure their central control nodes. Admiral Krelna, watching from the observation deck of the Astral Seeker with Director Chen and Kalith, felt her skin ripple with apprehension. They don't understand what they're doing. No, Chen agreed, her expression eerily calm. But they will learn. The massive Urrax dreadnought moved toward Earth with predatory grace, weapons systems charged and targeting arrays sweeping the planet's surface. It entered high orbit without incident, sensors detecting no defensive response from the seemingly dormant human installations. This is too easy, Klith observed, his exoskeleton darkening. The humans, I remember, would never surrender without purpose. As if triggered by his words, the fabric of space surrounding the Sovereign Claw began to distort. The massive vessel slowed, then stopped entirely, trapped in a localized time dilation field that made its movements infinitesimally slow from external perspective. What would have been panicked communications from the crew emerged as stretched, unintelligible signals. Throughout the system, what had appeared to be moons, asteroids, and orbital habitats began transforming. Surfaces that seemed solid and inert flowered open, revealing intricate machinery that had been disguised for centuries. On Mercury, a planetary-scale mechanism activated, converting the entire inner planet into a dimensional stabilization array that glowed with blue-white energy. The Sol system is not merely our home, Chen explained as the delegation watched in awe. It's our primary defensive installation, redesigned at the molecular level over 5 centuries. Jupiter's Great Red Spot, that ancient atmospheric storm observed by humans since their earliest telescopes, spiraled open to unveil a massive fleet that had been hiding in a pocket dimension. Ships unlike any design known to the Council emerged by the thousands, their hulls rippling with the same circuitry visible beneath Chen's skin. "We didn't want this confrontation," Chen said quietly, addressing Krelna rather than the spectacle unfolding before them. "Everything you see was developed to fight the Void, not other sentient species." The science officer aboard the Thraxi flagship detected an impossible energy surge emanating from Earth's moon. The readings exceeded the output of their home star, causing the sensor arrays to overload and fail. Across the Council fleet, communication systems scrambled as quantum interference disrupted standard protocols. When communications were restored, Director Chen's voice reached every ship simultaneously, translated perfectly into each species' native language or communication method. "This is Director Ileana Chen of Earth's stewardship. We didn't want this confrontation, but we've prepared for it nonetheless. While you've been advancing your civilizations incrementally, we've been fighting a war against the Void itself." The human fleet made no aggressive moves, yet positioned itself in a complex three-dimensional pattern around the Council armada. On Earth, thousands of dormant structures activated simultaneously, creating a planetary defense grid visible even from distant vessels. "Your ships are currently contained, not destroyed," Chen continued. "This demonstration is not meant as a threat, but as evidence. What you are witnessing is a fraction of what we've developed to combat the Void Striders. The Council must understand that humanity did not withdraw out of fear or hostility but necessity." The image of a dimensional anchor like the one beneath Antarctica appeared on every view screen. "These anchors are all that stand between conscious life and oblivion. The recent outpost failures occurred because our existing network is being overwhelmed by increasing incursions. We need the Council's cooperation, not its animosity." War Minister Grail's voice cut through the transmission, his tone venomous. "This display changes nothing. You admit to unauthorized deployment of technology throughout Council space, technology that has caused deaths and destruction." "Minister," Chen replied, her voice remaining measured, "you must understand the scale of what we face. The Void Striders are not a human fabrication. They err." Her transmission cut off abruptly as reality itself seemed to shudder. Massive energy spikes registered throughout the system as dimensional sensors detected multiple simultaneous breaches. Chen's expression shifted to something between alarm and grim satisfaction. "It seems they've arrived right on schedule. Now, Council representatives, you will see our true enemy firsthand." The Council's attack on Earth coincided with the Void Striders' most coordinated assault in 5 centuries. As warships positioned themselves to fire upon Earth's defenses, reality itself seemed to shudder. Space rippled like disturbed water, creating visual distortions that disoriented crews across both fleets. Massive rifts tore open throughout the system, geometric tears in the fabric of existence that glowed with impossible colors that caused physical pain to observe directly. Similar breaches appeared simultaneously across Council space, on homeworlds, space stations, and even aboard the attacking vessels. "By the first light," whispered Tai Lin, as the Astral Seeker's sensors registered hundreds of breaches activating across the galaxy. "They're everywhere." From the rifts emerged entities that defied comprehension, creatures of impossible geometry that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the visible universe allowed. Their forms shifted constantly, appendages becoming spirals, becoming fractals, becoming voids, never settling into anything recognizable. They moved through solid matter as if it were insubstantial, leaving reality distorted in their wake. Aboard a Thraxi cruiser, the commander ordered weapons fire against the nearest entity. Energy beams passed harmlessly through the Void Strider, while crew members who looked directly at it collapsed, their eyes turning to obsidian before their bodies disintegrated into fine dust that scattered through the ship's ventilation systems. In the Council chamber itself, High Counselor Zhen Tu watched in horror as his security forces dissolved into dust upon contact with the entities that poured through a massive rift in the center of the chamber. The emergency broadcast system carried screams from 1,000 worlds as similar scenes played out across council space. Then, something unexpected happened. Human ships emerged from hidden gates near every rift, deploying technologies that bent light, gravity, and consciousness itself. The vessels positioned themselves in precise geometric formations around each breach, creating overlapping fields that seemed to stabilize the surrounding space. From Earth, a transmission reached all Council species, bypassing normal communication channels to manifest directly through any available output device. This is the stewardship of Earth. What you are witnessing is a Level 7 void incursion. For 5 centuries, we have contained smaller breaches while developing effective countermeasures. We will deploy these measures now. Director Chen, standing on the Astral Seeker's observation deck, turned to Admiral Krelna. Now you understand why we became what we are. Conventional weapons and technologies cannot affect the Void Striders. They exist partially outside our reality. Then how do you fight them? Krelna asked, her skin pale with fear as she watched Council ships being systematically consumed. We had to change what we are, Chen replied, her human appearance flickering to reveal something more complex beneath, patterns of energy and matter intertwined in impossible configurations. To fight entities that exist between dimensions, we had to become beings capable of the same. Across the galaxy, billions of humans, their bodies enhanced with technology that made them toxic to void entities, stepped willingly into the rifts. They moved with purpose and coordination, their forms shifting and adapting as they engaged the enemy in their own domain. On the Council homeworld, diplomats and representatives fled in panic as Void Striders poured through multiple breaches. Those who couldn't escape were moments from dissolution when humans materialized between them and the entities. The humans formed living barriers, their bodies emanating fields that repelled the Striders. The screams of dying civilizations mixed with a strange harmonic tone as humanity engaged the enemy directly. Where humans and Void Striders met, reality itself seemed to protest, creating visual and auditory distortions that overloaded most recording devices. Cliff watched the battle unfold with the stillness of his species, but his internal organs vibrated with a frequency that only the most sensitive instruments could detect, the Coxoralcan expression of profound emotional response. They've become the perfect predator for the predator, he observed. Evolution as deliberate choice rather than natural selection. Not without cost, Chen replied, her form increasingly unstable as more of her kind entered the rifts. What you're seeing is the culmination of 5 centuries of transformation. Every human who enters a rift sacrifices part of their humanity. The very consciousness the Void Striders feed upon becomes the bait in our trap. Admiral Krelna's scientific tentacles extended involuntarily in understanding. You're not just fighting them. You're poisoning them. 3 months after what became known as the Convergence Crisis, a transformed Galactic Council reconvened in a chamber still bearing scorch marks from the Void attack. The magnificent hall, once a showcase of architectural perfection, now displayed the scars of battle, deliberate reminders of how close civilization had come to extinction. Nearly 40 species had lost their homeworlds, and countless billions had perished before humanity's intervention had closed the rifts. Representatives of the surviving council races sat in solemn silence, many still processing the horrors they had witnessed and the revelations that had followed. Where once 732 seats had been arranged in concentric circles, now many stood empty. Some species had been completely eradicated, their seats removed entirely. Others had lost their representatives during the attack on the council chamber, their positions temporarily vacant until replacements could be appointed. High Counselor Gentoo, his crystalline form now bearing fracture lines that would never heal, called the session to order with a single resonant note rather than the traditional gavel strike. We gather to formally recognize the truth that was hidden from us for 5 centuries. He began, his voice modulated to carry both authority and humility, and to welcome back those who protected us even as we rejected them. Admiral Krelna, now bearing mechanical implants given to her by humans to heal wounds no council medicine could treat, approached the central podium. The implants visible along her tentacles pulsed with the same subtle pattern seen in human technology, allowing her to move despite injuries that should have been fatal. Esteemed colleagues, she addressed the assembly, we stand here only because Earth never truly abandoned us. While we built weapons against each other, they built shields to protect us all. While we debated policies and territorial disputes, they fought a war we could not perceive. The main entrance to the chamber opened, drawing all eyes. Director Chen entered, flanked by her team. Their forms now flickered between human and something else, beings of energy and matter intertwined. Where they walked, reality seemed to bend slightly, adjusting to accommodate entities that no longer fully existed within conventional dimensions. Among Chen's delegation walked Killith, the last Coralkin, now bearing similar implants to those seen on Krelna. His chitinous exoskeleton had been partially replaced with circuitry that allowed him to interact with human technology. The empty seat of Earth was never truly empty, Chen said as she approached the center of the chamber, her voice resonating with harmonic undertones that brushed against the consciousnesses of all present. We were always here, watching, waiting, and preparing. The Void Striders have been driven back, but not defeated. They will return stronger, having tasted so much consciousness during this incursion. She moved toward Earth's long vacant council seat, which now seemed too small, too primitive for what humanity had become. The simple chair with its blue-green inlays appeared almost childlike, a relic of what humans had once been. We offer not alliance but instruction. Chen continued, her form becoming more stable as she focused her attention on maintaining a mostly human appearance. What we have learned fighting the void, we will teach you. What we have become to survive it, you must understand. War Minister Grawl, his scaled form bearing severe burns that would never fully heal, rose from the Urax delegation. And what assurance do we have that humanity will not become the very threat they claim to fight? You have hidden among us, manipulated our reality, and developed technologies beyond our comprehension. Chen regarded him without anger. We have become monsters to fight monsters, yes. We have surrendered our place among normal civilizations to become the guardians of reality itself. But we remain, at our core, human. And humans have always defined themselves by their capacity to protect others. She finally took her place in the ancient seat, which immediately began to transform, its materials reconfiguring to accommodate her partially non-physical form. The mystery that had terrified the galaxy for 5 centuries revealed itself not as abandonment but as the ultimate sacrifice. The empty seat is filled at last, High Counselor Gen 2 observed, not by humans as we knew them, but by what humans became for all our sakes.